So how about this? 3 days worth of filming clips for a bookshelf organizational video, and I forgot to film an intro. So on the tail end of getting this video done, I realized, sat down to edit the video and realized I didn't film an intro. So I'm doing things backwards in terms of things, but it's totally fine. Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a bookshelf organizational video in which I am tackling my adult romance shelves. This is part one of a two-part bookshelf organizational video in which I not only had to organize one bookshelf, but two bookshelves to fill it with romance books. So you will see kind of the work in progress that happens with the first shelf in this video. And then later on, you'll see the second part where I talk about the mass market paperback books. But this first video is going to be a chronicling of me organizing, trying to organize between both of the shelves in my study. And then what I do is I go through one of the shelves where I start with my trade paperbacks for adult romance, then progressively go into the start of the mass market paperbacks for adult romance. So without further ado, since this is a long video, I'm just going to jump into it. And then I may see you in the editing side of things to kind of add in anything that I forgot to include in this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So it is about 7 o'clock in terms of things. I am in my filming corner over here. I have 4 banker's boxes full of romance books here, as well as this whole entire stack right here that I am sorting through to try to see if I can put these on the shelf that I'm trying to work with. And it's definitely going to be a tight squeeze regardless. We're going to go through all of these different books, and the ones in the banker's boxes as well as the ones on the floor right here, and also the ones that are already on the shelves. But yeah, I have my work cut out for me in terms of getting these sorted through. But we are going to take our time and we are going to see what books that I want to hold on to and put on my shelf, and see what other ones that I feel can have another good home. But it just depends in terms of how things are going to go. Progress update, I have taken all of the books out of the banker's boxes that were romance, and as you can see, it is a lot here. So this is basically almost every romance book, physical romance book that I own. And we're going to have our work cut out for us in terms of the massive amount of books. I told all of you that I definitely have a lot of mass market paperback romance books. Some of them a good portion of them I know I have read. Others of them I have not gotten to, and I definitely want to catch up before I try to pick up many more in terms of things. Some of these are older series and some of these are quite new. So you may see me go through each of these, and I'm definitely going to have my work cut out for me. Progress update on the shelf. As you can see, I have taken all of the books that were on this respective shelf that weren't romance and put them in other places for the time being, in other bankers boxes to sort through later. But you can see that several of these shelves are clear, and you can see it's very dusty. So I'm definitely have my work cut out for me in terms of sorting through what's already here. I don't know. I honestly don't know if all of the books that I have taken out in terms of the banker's boxes that are on my floor near my filming station are going to fit on this shelf, but we are absolutely going to try, and we'll see how it goes. On the top here, I've put special editions in terms of collectors sets of books on the top, and I'm not 100% sure what else I'm going to put on this particular space on the top of the bookshelf yet. As you can see, the Minnie Mouse wreath is still here. Yeah, I definitely need to dust off the shelf before I do anything else, and then I will start sorting through these books. So look forward to it. So I'm about 95% done with this particular shelf in terms of shelving the books, as you can see here. And I already know that this is not going to work, unfortunately. So what I am going to do is actually unload the books that are currently on the shelf, which is all adult romance, and transfer it to another shelf that is in the same vicinity. I did reorganize the top of the bookshelf, which I will detail later in a different video, but the unfortunate thing is that all of my romance books do not and will not fit on this shelf. And I kind of had an idea that it would not, unfortunately, but it shouldn't take me too long to unload the books off of this because I have a area to stage them on, but I'll have to unload the books off the other bookshelf in order to make this work. So I will give a progress update once that's done, and we'll see what happens. All right, at this point, I think we're good. So I have my adult romance collection spread across 2 bookshelves, and it looks like all of them were able to fit. So I'm gonna go through each of these books one by one, and it's kind of a long process in terms of organizing them. I tried to put them in alphabetical order as much as possible in terms of the collection that I have, but there's still some different books that are essentially ones that I'll have to rearrange, and I'm going to go through each of these and decide which ones I'm going to keep, what I'm going to put on Pango Books, and essentially decide whether or not they're going to stay in my collection, whether I've read them or not. A lot of these I have read, a lot of these I have not read, so we're just going to go through each of them and see how it goes. So this is the first shelf. This is all of my mass market paperbacks on one shelf. So I've had to kind of decide how I wanted to do the filming of this video, because the room that I'm currently in is full of a lot of different boxes and a lot of different books. So I'm just basically seated beside this particular bookshelf, which is one of 2 bookshelves that I have filled with adult romance books. This is the majority of this is the trade paperback books and hardcover, as well as a few of the mass market paperbacks of adult romances that I own. This is going to probably be a 2-part video because of the sheer volume of how many books I have in my collection. We're going to go through each of these, and I'm just going to try to see like whether or not there are certain books that I'm going to keep in my collection, and whether or not they may be ones that I decide to give another home, or prioritize reading and then maybe donate them. So we shall see what happens. I'm going to try to keep a tally of the most common, the authors that I own the most books from, in a separate tally. So that may be coming in my second video, which is the second part to this particular bookshelf organizational video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So we're going to start with this first cube here, and then just kind of work our way right. It probably shows up inverted, but I assure you this is like going from left to right based on facing it forward. So let's start with this shelf. Let's see, the first one that I have here is a paperback edition of The Devil's Doorbell, which is an erotic anthology. And this is a who's who of a lot of different authors, including Anne Calhoun, Megan Hart, M. O'Keefe, Christine D'Abo, Hefe Kennedy, Megan Moultrie, and Delphine Dryden. And I have read from each of these authors before in terms of my reading history, and I have not read, I think I have actually read this book, but I have not given a review on it. So I think I am definitely keeping this in my collection. I liked it. It's just been quite some time since I picked it up, so this is definitely staying. And then I have 2 anthologies here, which I believe are no longer in print, but I believe they're considered new adult romance. The first one is 80s Mixtape, which is a romance rewind anthology. I really love the cover of this one. It has a lot of who's who of different authors: Karen Booth, Gwen Hayes, Autumn Jones Lake, Jenny Holiday, AJ Pine, Bobby Ruggiero, and Rachel Cowell. So I'm definitely holding on to this, especially since you can't really find it anymore. And then to complement that is the 90s playlist, which is all stories and I forgot to mention this for the 80s mixtape. They're all stories. The collective stories are romance stories that take place in the 80s for 80s mixtape. But for the 90s playlist, these all take place in the 90s as well. And this is different authors as well. I have read from several of these different authors before: Brighton Walsh, Laura Lee Brown, Amy Jo Cousins, Audra North, Rebecca Grace Allen, and Jennifer Blackwood. But I'm definitely holding on to this, especially since, like I mentioned before, you can't get these anymore. And then I have The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes by Zio Axelrod. This is a book that I originally got as a galley from NetGalley. I have not read this yet, and I definitely want to, so it's definitely staying in my collection. Next is a book that I think I actually did read this quite some time ago, but I don't think I've ever written a review on it. This is Be With Me by Maya Banks. This is one of the original covers for it. I think the cover has a redesign, but this is definitely more steamy, and it's about as steamy as Maya Banks can get in terms of this. I remember liking this, but it's been so long since I've read it, so I definitely want to reread this when I get a chance to be able to give it a proper review. But it's definitely staying in my collection. And then I have Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur. And this is one that I have not gotten to yet, but I definitely plan on reading it and giving my thoughts about it. And we shall see. Then I have Nobody Does It Better by Lauren Blakely. This is one that's probably on the chopping block for me because I have read quite a number of books by Lauren Blakely, but she's not an author that I auto-buy from. It's just basically I like certain stories that she has written, but unfortunately, like, it's been mostly hit or miss. So this is probably one that I'm going to set to the side. And it's not even really that long of a novel. I think this is a novella, but I'm definitely going to read it, but it's probably one that I'm not going to keep on my collection, so I'm going to set it to the side, and then once I read it, then we'll see whether or not it stays in my collection or not. So that's definitely one that's in the tentative pile. Next is one of the play-by-play books by J.C. Burton. This is Quarterback Draw. I do remember getting this book quite some time ago. I haven't read all of the books in the play-by-play series, but I definitely plan on doing so. I think I have the first 2 books on audiobook, and then I think this is the 3rd one, if I remember correctly. If it's not, then I'll definitely put a note on here to kind of correct myself on it. But this is definitely a series that I appreciate from what I've read of it, and this is staying in my collection for right now. I don't have the whole series in my collection, and I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to collect all of them or if it's just going to be a case of where I have a few of them and then just keep my favorites, but we'll see. But this is definitely a key. I'm keeping it. And then I have another J.C. Burton. This is the Brotherhood by Fire book, which is hot to the touch. This is about firemen. I'm definitely keeping this. I have not read all of this series either, but I do want to do a project where I'm able to read from all of these different books and be able to give my thoughts on them and then kind of decide whether they stay in my collection or not. But this is definitely staying for now. And then I have 2 books from the VIP series by Kristen Callahan. The second, I have the first book in that series, which I believe is called Idol. I will put a cover up for your reference because I own it digitally. So this is one of the books that I own digitally. Like, it's multimedia, different medias. Like, I own the series through different mediums, so it's just basically chaos in terms of things. But I have the first book, which is called Idol, on by ebook, and then I have the second and third book of the series in physical form, and then I have the 4th book in this series by ebook on digital. So, like I said, it's a little bit chaotic, but the second book in the VIP series is called Managed, and this is the cover for this. I'm definitely keeping it. And then the 3rd book in this series is called Fall. This is the cover. Both of those I'm definitely keeping. So We are almost halfway through this first shelf, so once everything is once I go through the rest of this, I'm going to just put these books back where they were, because I think I organized everything in alphabetical order already, so it looks like it's good to go in terms of that. So going on to the next book, this is In Bed with the Earl by Christy Caldwell. I actually got this I won this as part of a fundraising effort, and it's a signed edition. I don't know if it's personalized to me. Let me see. Yes, it is personalized to me, so I'm not going to show it, but I was very happy to receive this as part of a winning bid for a fundraiser that I was able to do, and it's definitely one that I'm holding on to in my collection, especially since it's signed and personalized. The next one is a book that I actually got as a galley for NetGalley, and it came on my radar because of that. Unfortunately, I think the galley expired before I could pick it up, so I definitely wanted to pick up a copy of this. And this is an author that I have read from before and liked before. This is Stroke of Luck by Opal Carew, and this is definitely staying in my collection for now. I definitely like Carew's style of writing. I definitely want to see what this particular story is about and give you my thoughts when I get a chance to. The next one is one that I have read before, and I actually really love this story. This is Stroke of Midnight by Andy J. Christopher. This is a novella, which is a part of a 3-book novella series. I'm trying to remember the name of the series for it. I think it's One Night in South Beach. Okay, so yeah, the One Night in South Beach series, and this is the very first one in that particular series. I definitely plan on collecting the rest of the series, so this is definitely staying in my collection. This is actually a redesigned cover, and it is very, very cute. I don't remember what the original covers to the trilogy look like, but I'll at least put a cover of the original first book in this series just for comparison, just in case there are people who may have this in their collection. But this was redesigned. I actually really thought that both the story and the cover for it was really cute. I'm trying to remember if I did do a proper review for this. If I didn't, then it's going to get a reread, and I'm definitely going to give my thoughts on it because I really enjoyed it. And then we have one of the books that I really enjoyed that I have not read in so many years, and this is from one of my favorite authors. This is Jennifer Crusoe's Maybe This Time. This is a romantic story involving paranormal experiences, and I really enjoyed this. I think I'm trying to remember because it's been so many years since I've read Maybe This Time. And man, I just remember reading this and loving it as for so many different reasons of terms of how funny and how engaging it was. It wasn't one of my favorites from Crusoe, not in the same way that say Bettany was, or Agnes and the Hitman, but I did enjoy this particular book, and I definitely want to give it a reread at some point. But without saying that, it's definitely staying in my collection. And then I have another signed copy from an author that I've been meaning to get to. I think actually the author sent me the wrong copy of this the books in this particular series, because I think I won the first book in this particular series and in an auction. And she sent me the second book instead, but I'm not mad about it. I can always pick up the first one. And I believe this was personalized to me, yes. So this is An Heiress Guide to Deception and Desire by Amanda Collins. This is the cover. This is the second book in that respective series. I will put up a cover of the first book in this respective series, but I'm definitely planning on reading it. Then we have another romance book that has been in my collection for a long time, and I read it many years ago, and I actually really enjoyed it, and I've been meaning to reread it. This is Unpredictable by Eileen Cook. And I remember the first time that I picked up this book, I thought the cover of it was really cute, and it talks about a psychic, and I was really into the TV series Psych at the time, so it was kind of like a no-brainer that I would pick this up. And also it's blurred by this particular edition is blurred by Jennifer Cruzy, so I knew I wanted to pick it up, and I thought it was just really cute in terms of the cover. The actual book itself was okay in terms of the actual story about it, but it's been so many years since I've read it, and I've been meaning to reread it to see what my thoughts about it are now, because, you know, opinions change over time. But I do remember parts of this being really cute and quirky, and definitely in the vein of a rom-com, which I know rom-coms are basically, like, you know, the term is used very frequently to describe things that aren't romantic comedy, but I think that this did a really good job with the romantic comedy bit in it, but we'll see how it goes. But definitely keeping that in my collection. Then we have You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Daria. Definitely keeping this in my collection, and I definitely have yet to read it, but I definitely want to. And I've been meaning to get the sequel to it as well. I think I might actually have a galley of the second book. If I don't, then I'll definitely put a note up on here, but this is the second book to that respective series. And then we have another one of my favorite authors who I was introduced to via NetGalley many years ago in terms of the books that she has written. I don't think that she has written anything recent as far as I know, but I do enjoy her writing style. I enjoy the immersion in her respective stories, and I always look forward to being able to pick up on what she writes. This is Just One Lie by Kyra Davis, and this is definitely staying in my collection. I don't think I've read that particular book in that respective series, because I think the first book, or Just One Lie is a follow-up to the book which is called Just One Night, which is one of the first books that I read from her that I got as a galley from NetGalley. And I remember that book because I remember how well it was written and how much I enjoyed it. So I definitely want to, at least at some point, finish Just One Lie and give a proper review for it. And then I have another author whose writing I definitely appreciate as well. This is Sylvia Day, which is a combination of two different stories. This is Afterburn, Aftershock. And I remember I got this specific edition because I loved the cover with the shoes and the golden shoes. And I don't think this is a group of stories that I've actually read from Sylvia Day, but I definitely want to hold on to it and then give my thoughts on this once I do pick it up. And then we come to the last 4 books on this shelf. And so this is one of my favorite authors as well. I have collected all 3 of these books. I believe I've read all of these, but I have not given a review on this. This is I'm trying to remember the name of the series for this, because I know there's a name for this respective series, but I just can't think of it right off the top of my head. And it's a 3-book trilogy that I originally got as galleys on NetGalley. Yeah, I don't remember the name of this respective series, but I will showcase the titles of it. And I read this quite some time ago, but I definitely want to reread them and give them proper reviews. So the first one in this respective series is called Mercy by Ellen K. Diamond. Second book is called Only. This is the cover for this. And then the last one in that respective series is called Mine. And as you can see, they all have wonderful covers. I really enjoyed the stories that I read from Helen K. Diamond before, and that was one of the first that I was able to pick up from her before I started picking up other titles from the author. So I definitely want to reread them and give them proper reviews. And then last is another book that I think is from an author that was new to me, and I actually like the cover of this. This is the old cover for this respective book, and I don't think it's in print anymore. This is Room for You by Beth Ehelman. And this is the cover for that. I think this is new adult, if I remember correctly, but I do plan on reading it and giving my thoughts once I get a chance to read it. And then we'll determine whether or not it stays in my collection, but I think it's going to be a good one from what I've heard of it. So I'm going to put all of these books back. That's the first part of the shelf that's done, and we're going to just move on to the second one. All right, I think we're good. We have only one book in the maybe pile so far, so at least this isn't a completely wasted effort in terms of trying to decide how much more room I can make on my shelves, but we'll see how it goes. But at least for this first shelf in terms of my adult romance collection. So let's go with the next group. This is a book that I got fairly recently. I don't know if I shared this as part of a book haul of books that I got, but this is from an author that I really have enjoyed so far. This is one of the authors that contributed to the book Halo, which I talked about on the channel before, but this is Finley by Ella Frank. And so I'm definitely keeping this and giving my thoughts on it once I read it. Next book is an old library book that I got used from an author that I have been reading for many years, and she's definitely one of my favorites. This is Up in Flames by Lori Foster. I originally got this as a galley way back when in the day, and I can't even remember what year that it was, but I did get this as a galley. I read it and enjoyed it. Did not give a review for it, which I need to remedy and so this is definitely staying in my collection, and I'm definitely going to reread it. But I think this respective book is out of print now in terms of this respective edition. I'm not 100% sure if it's still available to purchase, but as for this, I'm definitely planning on rereading it and giving my thoughts about it. Next is A Christmas Story, and I believe I have read this. This is Christmas at Fireside Cabins by Jenny Hale. This is definitely staying in my collection. I have not given a review for this, but I definitely want to keep it in my collection for the time being until I do and give my thoughts about it. And then we come to a plethora of titles from one of my favorite authors in terms of books that I have been reading for years. Megan Hart is definitely one of my autobuy authors in terms of works I've loved. So many of the books that she has written over the years, and you will kind of see a combination of books that I've purchased from her in terms of the imprint that she's under now, as well as her Harlequin titles. So we're just going to quickly go through each of them. And some of these I have read, some of these I have not read in my collection yet, but I plan on doing so. But we'll see what happens in terms of all of them. But the first one I want to highlight is Always You by Megan Hart. I don't think I've read this yet, but I definitely want to. And then we have By the Sea of Sand. I have definitely read this and I definitely liked it. I don't think I've posted a review yet. I think I give this overall 4 stars, but it's definitely one that I want to revisit and give my thoughts about. Next is one of the more recent purchases of Megan Hart that I have picked up. This is Coming Up from Air. This is the cover for it. The cover is really pretty, but I have not had the opportunity to read this yet. And then this next one is actually one of my favorite stories from Megan Hart. This is Collide. And this was written, if I remember the story of this correctly, this is a book about a woman who has different, goes in and out of different fugue states, and she falls in love with a model, a very popular model in the 70s that she is like, you know, in love with in terms of things, and she goes back and forth in time in between these different fugue states. And I thought this was very well written. I enjoyed it for what it offered. It has been a number of years since I've read it, but I really enjoyed this book very, very much. So it's staying in my collection. And then we have Deeper by Megan Hart. This was a very well done story of love and grief. I have not read this book in quite a number of years, but I did. It's one of my favorites from Megan Hart, and it's definitely staying in my collection. I love, this is the old cover for it, as it was published under Harlequin Spice, which is no longer an imprint for Harlequin, but I love the cover and the story of this so much, I had to have this particular edition, so it has been in my collection for quite some time. Definitely holding on to it, though. And then we have some other books. This is Dirty, which is one of my favorite Megan Hart novels, but this is the reissued version that was not published under Harlequin Spice. I think this was a reissue back when 50 Shades of Grey was taking off, and it was one of the reissue cover with a lot of flowers and things like that. But the Harlequin Spice version, I think, had a like a bathroom stall and things like that. I'll put the original cover of it for your reference. But it has since been redesigned multiple times, and I think it's even been published under a new title, if I remember correctly. So I think I'll put the cover up here for your reference. But it's just a well done story for a lot of different. It tackles quite a number of different difficult issues with family and trauma and things like that. So I definitely enjoyed this. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to hold on to this particular edition, but it's going to stay in my collection until I reread it again, so it'll stay on my shelf. And then we have Flying by Megan Hart. I remember this respective story. It wasn't one of my favorites from Megan Hart, but I did appreciate the narrative that it told, respectively, about, I think it was about a flight attendant who has various rendezvous and basically chronicles those um, as she's going through different flights and things like that, if I remember correctly. It's been a little while since I read it. I originally read this as a galley, and I did enjoy it enough to be able to purchase a copy for my collection. So this is definitely staying in my collection for now. I do want to give it a reread to see if after so many years of having not being away from it, if I really want to be able, if I have a different appreciation for the story that it chooses to tell. So I do try to keep certain stories in my collection, because there are some books that I read when I was younger, or just in general, where I didn't have an appreciation for certain themes and motivations and things like that. So I do reread enough books, even ones that I haven't read in a number of years, to be able to see if my thoughts have changed about them. So I do like reading books, and I do like rereading books and re-experiencing books um, that I haven't had the experience from in quite some time. And then I have Hold Me Close by Megan Hart. This was a very interesting book. I remember this distinctly, about the individual couple being in a situation where they were held as captive for quite some time, and they end up bonding over that shared trauma. But this is a controversial book that tackles a very difficult subject in a way that I actually appreciated once I did read it. It wasn't my favorite book, but I did appreciate the story that it was telling. And so this is going to stay in my collection for right now. I actually really love the cover, and I appreciate the story, so it's definitely going to stay in my collection for now. Then I have another book that I have not had the opportunity to read quite yet. This is How Dark the Night by Megan Hart. And I think, I want to say that this was paranormal. I'm not 100% sure, but it's one of the books that is more recent in Megan Hart's collection that I've wanted to get to. I like the cover, and I obviously bought a physical copy of it, so I'm definitely planning on reading it and keeping it in my collection for right now. So I definitely have a book that I got as a galley that I really appreciated, and I love the cover for, but I have never been able to give a proper review of this particular book, and it confounds me because I really do need to review it, and I've had it for several years. This is Lovely Wild by Megan Hart, and I really appreciated the story that this told about a woman dealing with a lot of different issues in terms of her relationships as well as her past. And so I do plan on rereading this at some point. I just don't know when I'll be able to get to it, but it's long overdue for a review. I gave this, I think, 4 stars, and it is on my Goodreads, but I have not, like, it confounds me because I have not been able to articulate what I wanted to say. It's coming down the pipeline at some point. And then I have one of my favorite novellas by Megan Hart. This is Moments of Disarray, an Alex Kennedy novel. This is a part of the series that includes several novels that talk about that feature the character Alex Kennedy, and this is one that I think started with the book. I'm trying to remember. I think it was called Tempted. I don't remember because it's one of the Megan Hart books that I don't actually own in my collection. So because he's kind of the third wheel in a story where he gets involved with a married couple who has a troubled marriage, and he kind of like has very distinct quirks about him, with including his Hello Kitty pajamas, and he's bisexual as well. So this is just this is a follow-up novella to that respective series. And I'll get back to talking about Alex Kennedy in a little bit because he's featured in one of my absolute favorite Megan Hart novels in a little bit. But Moments of Disarray is a male novella that's a complement novella to that respective series. I don't know if I gave a proper review for it, but that's definitely a story. This is definitely a story I want to get back to because I did really enjoy reading about the relationship that was portrayed in this book. And as I mentioned before, this is one of my all-time favorite Megan Hart novels, as well as favorite covers. I kind of hate the fact that it has an old sticker on it, but I can't help it. This is Naked by Megan Hart. And as you can see, this is just a really lovely cover. This is telling the story of Alex Kennedy relationship, and it's written in the perspective of the biracial black woman who is the main character in this particular story. I think the main character, Olivia, I believe, yeah, Olivia is the main character of this novel, and she begins a relationship with Alex Kennedy. And from the start of the novel, like, it deals with a lot of different issues in terms of rekindled relationships, as well as the struggles that Olivia has in terms of her former relationships and whether or not she wants to get involved with Alex again. It has been so many years since I've read this particular book, and I've reread it several times, but it confounded it to me. I have not given a proper review of this book, though I believe I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars at the time that every time that I have read it, and I really enjoyed being able to follow both Alex and Olivia's relationship in this particular novel. But I hope to review it soon, and we shall see what happens. But it's definitely staying in my collection for being one of my favorite stories, and also one of my favorite covers from Megan Hart. And that was also, to make a note of it, this was the cover that was published under the Harlequin Spice imprint. Then we have Perfectly Reckless by Megan Hart. I want to say that this may have been published as another title before, but let me see. No, I don't think it was. I think this is a second chance romance. I'm trying to remember if I did read this at one point. I think I did, but I did not review it. So this is definitely one that I'm keeping in my collection. I actually love the cover to this, and I definitely want to be able to review it and give my thoughts on it, but this is a second chance romance. Then I have this book, which was published many years ago, that I read and I really enjoyed it for the way that it portrayed its respective relationships. This is The Space Between Us. And I think this was one of the quintessential books that I read that introduced me to, or at least gave a very nuanced portrayal of a three-way relationship that is very complicated and complex, and the main character is involved with a couple, and she kind of feels like the third wheel in the relationship, and she kind of grapples with respect to how she feels about being in that respective relationship. And I remember reading this as a galley from NetGalley when before it first came out. I think the galley cover was definitely different from this one. I'll put the cover of it here for your reference. I actually liked that one a little bit better than the kind of generic flower version, but this one isn't bad. This one isn't bad, and obviously I've had it in my collection for quite a number of years, so it's definitely staying in my collection for the time being. Then I have Switch. Switch was a very interesting book by Megan Hart. I think this book, if I remember, this is the book that had the mysterious notes left to the heroine by the main male protagonist in this book. And the way that Megan Hart like writes this in terms of the obsession with stationery and things like that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book. So it's definitely staying in my collection. I remember having mixed feelings about the overarching story because it felt like when we reached the ending, it was a little bit incomplete, but I did really enjoy this book for what it offered at the time that I read it. And it's definitely due a reread. This is the second reissue cover for it as issued by Harlequin, but I'll put up the Harlequin Spice edition for it. It was the Harlequin Spice cover was definitely more spicy, as you can see from the picture here, but this is definitely staying in my collection, and I really enjoyed the story, and I definitely want to give it a reread. Okay, this next book is definitely one that I am torn on retaining, because here's the thing, I don't particularly gravitate towards stories that feature the main couple in a cheating relationship, and I have pretty strong thoughts about it, but at the same time, this particular book by Megan Hart did the issue in a way that I really appreciated and respected for what it offered. And I remember getting this as a galley, and then once it finally released, I did pick up a copy for myself. This is Tear You Apart by Megan Hart, and it was done so well in terms of getting into the emotional the mix of emotions that both of the main characters in this book were going through at the time in terms of how they ended up together, and kind of like the kind of the reckoning of their decisions and their respective relationship and what they grapple with during the course of the story. I thought it was well done. The steamy scenes were definitely as steamy as you would expect from Megan Hart. She does erotic writing, romantic writing very, very well, and that's why she's one of my favorite authors. But this particular book I did appreciate for how well it tackled the subject of the cheating, the main characters in a cheating relationship, and the fall, kind of like the reckoning like that they have as events transpire, without going into too many spoilers. I did write a review of this many years ago. I have not read it in quite some time. I definitely want to revisit it, but this is staying in my collection, and I do like the cover of it, the simplicity of it, and the interesting way that the symbolism works for this particular cover. This is definitely not going anywhere out of my collection. I will definitely keep hold on to it. But yeah, I did really respect this one in terms of things. It wasn't my favorite story, but I definitely respected it. And then we have Vanilla by Megan Hart. This was a very interesting novel that I think, if I remember correctly, it showcases a dom and a sub relationship, if I remember correctly. It has been a number of years since I've read this. I have not written a review on it. I definitely want to revisit it and read it for what it offers, but I got this originally as a galley. I like turns in terms of what it chooses to show, and I think it's one that I definitely want to revisit and get my thoughts on a little bit more thoroughly. But if I remember correctly, I think I gave this 4 stars. And then this next book is one that I think was originally called something else. I think this particular title was originally of several different parts. I think 5 different parts. That, or I could be wrong. Let me look and double check to see, because I could be very, very wrong on this. This was also a second chance romance as well. I just don't remember. Don't Deny Me. That's it. It was a novella series that was published several years back. I think originally under Harlequin, if I remember correctly, and I'll put the covers up for your reference here. But this next book is the reissued stories compiled into one collection. This is Unforgivable by Megan Hart. I read this many years ago when it was originally a serial series. So this is one that I haven't revisited in quite some time. I did respect and like that particular series, but like I said, it's one that I wanted to revisit to kind of get my thoughts on in terms of how I feel about it now versus when I read it way back when. But we shall see. And I actually do like the reissued cover for this particular book. I did enjoy the original serial covers for Don't Deny Me, but I did like this particular updated cover, which I think is published under a different imprint now than Harlequin. But yeah, definitely keeping that in my collection though. And then this is a big old book, and I purchased the physical copy of this from Amazon. And I guess the formatting of it is a little bit weird, but I definitely wanted to keep this in my collection because this is a series of stories that were written by Megan Hart, compiled all into one volume. This is On Top of Him by Megan Hart. And as you can see, this is the cover for it. I don't think I've read every story that is in this collection. I think, let's see, this particular book compiles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories. Yep, 6 stories. So this includes Beg For It, Drowning on Dry Land, Layover, Guilt in Midnight, Wanna Be Yours, Crossing the Line, and Letting Go. So all of those books are in this respective collection here. And I've read probably about half of the stories that were in here. They just had different covers, and you'll see the different covers as I have read them out. But I did enjoy the works that I was able to pick up and read before, and I definitely am looking forward to reading the rest of the stories that are in this collection. This is definitely staying, even though it is a very big brick of a book, but I'm glad to have it in my collection. Speaking of brick books, I do have a number of them, and they do include romance, but you'll see another brick book coming up pretty soon. But this next book is probably the only book in physical form that I own by Jessica Hawkins. This is Right Where I Want You. I have not read this yet, but I definitely want to. And I definitely want to give my thoughts about it. But this is staying in my collection for sure because it is fairly new, in fairly new condition. But yeah. And then last one is the complete collection for A.L. Jackson's respective trilogy. I don't remember the name of this particular trilogy. It could be called Fight For Me. I'm not sure, but this book is called Fight For Me by A.L. Jackson. And it includes the stories, and I'll put the individual covers up for your reference just in case you may either have the individual stories or you may want to have the individual stories for yourself. But it includes Show Me the Way, Follow Me Back, as well as Lead Me Home. So just to reference, this is the entire collection of those 3 novels. And so now that I've done with this respective shelf, I'm going to put everything back and hope nothing completely falls on top of me as I'm doing so. But yeah, I think all of these on this particular shelf I am definitely keeping. All right, I think we're good to go on this respective shelf, so I'm going to move on to the last one in this top row and give you my thoughts. So several books here that I am going to talk about really quickly. This is a Falling Stars novel. This is Kiss the Stars by A.L. Jackson. I have not read this. I did like the cover for it, so it's definitely staying in my collection. I don't know if this particular book has been redesigned in terms of the cover. I think it has. If it has, I'll put the cover up here for your reference, but I was just partial to this particular one in terms of things, so I definitely want to read it, and the next book is from an author I've been reading for many, many years, and I have several of her books. These several books are ones that I have had in my collection for quite some time. This is Mr. Satisfaction, which is two novellas. No, four novellas, and they're by four different authors, but the leading, like one of the first authors that's listed is from an author that I have been reading for many years. So Mr. Satisfaction, which starts with Brenda Jackson, who is the author I'm speaking of, and also this particular collection includes Delilah Dawson, Joy King, and Marianne Reed, who I haven't read as many books from, so I definitely want to do that. I have not read this yet, but it's definitely staying in my collection. I do like the cover for this. And then I have Her Little Black Book by Brenda Jackson as well. This is not one that I've read yet, and I definitely want to. I got this as a used copy from Pango Books of books that I wanted to pick up to read more from Brenda Jackson. This particular one I have not read. And then I have another novella book, which is by A.L. Jackson. This is Something About a Hot Guy. And as you can see, it is really, really short. Really, really short. I don't know if I've read this yet. I don't think I have. And I definitely want to remedy that at some point. But this is a really cute cover. And I've heard good things about it. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading it. Next up, more books from Brenda Jackson. I have read this collection. This is Some Like It Hot Stories by Brenda Jackson. I think I've told the story of how I came about this book on social media, but I'll recap it here. This was the absolute last copy of this respective book in my Barnes & Noble, and I considering how hard it is to find this respective edition in terms of things, I got lucky. I got very, very lucky, but I really like the cover of this respective collection of stories, and I actually really enjoyed the stories that were told in this as well. I don't think I have written a review of it yet, but I definitely want to revisit it and re-review it and give my thoughts about it, but I did enjoy it. It's very steamy, very satisfying in terms of the quality of the storytelling in each of these stories, and I definitely look forward to revisiting it. And then I have a book that I think is part of a series, and I can't remember. I think it's the Medar's family novels, but I'm not 100% sure. This is part of the Medar's family series. So this is Unfinished Business. And I've had this in my collection for quite some time. I have not read it, and I definitely want to. So this is one that I'm definitely keeping in my collection to be able to experience. And then I have two books that I've been meaning to get to for the longest time by an author I really respect and like. Definitely want to get to this, as well as one of the books that I don't own by Mika James, which is Being Married, which I hope to be able to pick up at some point. But this is part of the Desert Rose Hookup series. I believe Being Hospitable is the first book, and Being Cordial is the second book. And they're very, very short, very, very short, as you can see. So these are definitely staying in my collection. And then one of the crowning jewels of my collection in terms of things, I have a lot of books by Beverly Jenkins, as I said before, in terms of, like, you have no idea how many books of Miss Bev that I have in terms of things, but this is definitely one that I was very fortunate to be able to pick up as a hardcover edition, and this is the original cover for it. This is Topaz. And you can probably tell that how much older this particular edition is, because it's hard to find. It's very hard to find. And I have two editions of this book, as you'll see as I go through this particular book or bookshelf organizational video, and I'll explain why I have the mass market paperback edition of this as well when I get to it. But this is the hardcover version. As you can see, it's in pretty decent condition considering how long ago it was written. I think this was originally written back in and published under Avon Books, 1997. Yeah, so I've had it for quite some time, so definitely holding on to this. And then this is sadly the only physical edition copy of a book that I have read from this author. Even though I love her so much, I need to remedy that stat. But I've read several of her books digitally as well as an audiobook, which is kind of my preferred reading method for her books because the audio narrators are so great. But this particular book I knew I wanted to pick up in its physical edition. This is The Love Sisters, a collection by Christina C. Jones. And this is definitely staying in my collection. I have not read this yet. I have not read this in full yet. I think I've read the first story, which is, it's a collection of 3 different novellas. And I've read the first one, but I haven't read the last 2. So I'm definitely hoping to get to the rest of these as soon as I possibly can. And then we have another author who is one of my favorites as well. I've been reading her for years. I've read many of her books as Galleys from NetGalley, which was, I believe that was my introduction to her when I first picked up her works. But this particular trilogy is the Careless Whispers trilogy, and it's composed of 3 books. This is by Lisa Renee Jones. The first book in that series is called Denial. Second book is called Demand. As you can see, this is the cover here. And then the last book in that respective series is called Surrender. And all of these are, I'm glad to have them in my respective collection. They're beautiful covers. I have not had the opportunity to read them in complete in terms of things, but I'm definitely planning on getting to them as soon as I possibly can. And as far as one of the series that left an impression in my mind in terms of Lisa Renee Jones's works, this was a particularly popular series at the time that it was released, though I had mixed opinions about the way that it portrayed certain things, but I did really enjoy at least the first 2 books and the companion novellas to it. This is the Inside Out trilogy, which is the original. It ended up being a 6-book series, but this is the first 2 books in that respective trilogy. This is If I Were You. This is the original cover for this trade paperback version, followed by Being Me, which was actually my favorite novel of the first 3 books in this respective series. So I definitely wanted to hold on to that too. And I actually do really love the design of the original covers. And then this is the collection of novellas chronicling the relationships of Rebecca. This is Rebecca's Lost Journals. This is a novella series, which I really did enjoy. And I'm definitely keeping all 3 of those books. Okay, so this is weird because I was able to find 2 different editions of this respective book and respective series, so I don't know. I actually got a copy of this secondhand, and I have 2 different editions of this book in trade paperback as well as mass market paperback. I'll probably get rid of the mass market paperback because I don't orient it towards it very much in terms of things, but this is also by Lisa Renee Jones. This is The Truth About Cowboys, and this is the cover for that particular book in the trade paperback version. I think this is also the cover for the ebook, if I remember correctly, but Entangled Publishing, if I remember correctly, also had a mass market paperback cover edition, which I will cover later on in the scheme of this 2-part video. But I do orient more towards this respective cover versus the other one. Not that the other one is bad, but I just actually like this one a little bit better. And then I have a book that I think will be on the fence because I have mixed opinions about this particular author. This is Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. I have not read this yet. I did pick it up from Target, as you can tell from the sticker, but I have not had a chance to read it. I have not had the best relationship with some of Elle Kennedy's books, so I feel conflicted in terms of keeping this. So what I will do is I will put it alongside the Lauren Blakely book as being on the chopping block. If I don't end up enjoying the story, it will go to another home entirely. Either donate to my local bookstore, used bookstore, or on Pango Books. But I'll let all of you know once I do pick it up and read it. Then we have another book author that I have read for many years, and I really respect her work. Julie Kenner has published multiple books with Harlequin and other in other different imprints as well, and publishers as well, in terms of things. And I think I remember reading a lot of her Harlequin mainline books at the time that she published under Julie Kenner, but she has another, she also writes under another pen name, which is J. Kenner, and this is one of the books that I really enjoyed when I picked it up. I originally got it as a galley. I still need to write a review on this particular book, but this is Wanted by J. Kenner. As you can see, this is the cover right here. And I actually own this particular series in multiple formats, in digital format as well as physical, for at least for this book. I think I own the whole trilogy as an ebook. I originally got them as galleys, ended up buying all three of the books in the respective trilogy as ebooks. And then I got this one for a good price in the physical book. I do really love the cover. I did really enjoy the story for what it offered. I still need to write a proper review of it. So I have several books by Beth Carey, and some of them I have read, some of them I have not read. So I'm just going to go through them quickly so as to not make this particular video very, very long, because it's already like super long in terms of the clips that I'm filming. But the first book that I want to highlight is Only for You. You can't really see the title because of the Barnes & Noble sticker, but I did get this from Barnes & Noble. Then one of the books that I actually really enjoyed in terms of both the audiobook. I love the audiobook so much I was able to get a physical copy of it. This is Looking Inside, and I have read this. I just have not written a full review of it yet, but I definitely plan on doing so at some point. And then this is the second book in a duology, which I think started with Glimmer, this is the original cover for it, so I'm going to put that up for your reference. But I read that as a galley. I got the second book, which I didn't get as a galley, and I have not had the opportunity to read it. This is Glow, which is the follow-up to Glimmer. So the next several books that are the last part of this respective shelf, I'm going to go through quickly. I've talked about this book before. I don't think I've written a review for it, but I did enjoy it. This is A Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonia Lally, and I definitely want to revisit this and write a proper review for it, but this was absolutely delightful. And then I have two books that are a part of a respective series, which I'm trying to remember the name of the series. I've read the first book. I have not read the second book in this series, but I just want to make sure that I have the respective series. I think it's called Hot Asset. So the first book is Hot Asset by Lauren Lane. And then the second book is called Hard Sell. So I have the first two books in this respective series. I have not read this one. I definitely plan on doing so. And it's been a while since I've read the first book, so I have yet to write a review on it, but I'm definitely planning on doing so. And then we have a book that from an author that I have read before, but I don't think I've read this respective book. This is called Renegade by Laura Lee. I definitely plan on reading this and keeping this in my collection. And then I had talked about this book on the channel before. I got this secondhand. This is Hot in Here by Susan Lyons. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is one that is a reissued trade paperback book that I knew I wanted to get my hands on. This is from another one of my favorite romance authors. This is from Sarah MacLean, 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, and I love the cover of this so much. So I'm definitely planning on reading this and giving my thoughts about it, but I knew I wanted to get the trade on paperback edition of this book. I know it's still available in the mass market paperback edition, but I wasn't able to get my hands on it, but I definitely wanted to have it in my collection, so I had to pick up the trade paperback when it was released. So that is it for this respective part of the video. I'm going to put these books back, and then we're going to start on the second row of these shelves in a little bit.